Hey everybody, welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. Today we have Leah Pearlman who is here talking about her book Drawn Together. And these are some beautiful drawings that are inspirational, delightful. They really touch your heart and just in a very, very sweet way. They're very sweet. For me, they just feel really sweet.
Aw.
And I don't know how they feel to you because sometimes it's hard because when you're probably doing something, it's hard. At least I find that it's really hard to see yourself in the work that you do. But I find these very, very sweet.
Thank you. Yeah, I know what you're saying, except there's something special about these comics where they just feel like my best friends. Like they've just gotten me through so many interesting times that I look at them and I just sometimes I tear up. I feel so grateful for them.
Oh, you know. Oh no, I'm gonna tear up. Okay, so I was just talking to my husband. We were walking around. We did our weekly walk, and he said, Sarah Bareilles was saying that she wished she could say the things that she can sing, and that somehow her soul is able to communicate at a very, very deep level when she sings, or something, or soul or spirit. I'm not sure of what terminology she used, but it was about some deeper aspect of herself being able to communicate when she sings.
Hmm.
Do you feel that way when you're doing your drawings, or what happens to you when you're doing these drawings?
Oh yeah, all the time. I have a comic that's the caption is "Poetry is the heart of prose,"
Mm,
because it's my experience that um, we have all these words and all these experiences and all these stories and all this content of our lives. Um, and that can look very messy and busy. And sometimes it can look joyful and sometimes it can look angry and it can be all these crazy things. And maybe one of the reasons I love those comics so much is by the time I'm drawing a comic, I've usually been through some experience in my life where I've kind of been through all the messiness. I've been through the surface stuff. I've explored it. I've said all the things I meant to say, all the things I didn't mean to say. And eventually I kind of get to the essence of what the whole thing was all about.
mm. So
Um,
it's almost your aha at the after
yep.
all the soul searching, hardship, or whatever may happen. I actually had one of those this morning that literally uh, I had realized that money is so tied to conditional love,
Mm,
and I just realized someone was going to give me money, and I said, no, I don't, because that money comes with conditions, and I want love to be love, not love to be tied to money. And that was just a huge aha for me,
mm,
where it was, I don't know what cartoon, it would, I don't know what cartoon it would tie to, but if for me, if I were to do a cartoon, it would just be love unconditionally, that is really the key in
mhm.
life, right? Because when you love with all these conditions, it's the kind of love that feels bad on the other side. I
Mm.
think, yeah. Anyway, so that's my insight. So this is these are your insights. I don't know if you. I wanted to start because a lot of people want to know like how to make a huge transition like the one that you did, because as you say in the very beginning of your book, you're doing great. You're working at Facebook. You're making really good money. Um, and your dad was diagnosed with cancer. He was in remission. You felt like okay, and you said you described it as kind of stuffing down your feelings, and then he eventually passed, and then you went through this whole change. I assume, is that right? Or tell me your
It's
version.
close. It was actually it's when the cancer came back when it came out of remission. So that was when it was just sort of like I think I had, some kind of youthful denial or everything's going to work out or, I'm doing what I was always told, do
Mm-hmm.
the school right, get the job right. And there was so much about my job, at Facebook that was so good. I mean, I loved what we were doing. I loved my coworkers. It was creative. It was inspiring. There was so much good. And from the validation from the outside was so good, but something always felt off and
Mm-hmm.
not with the company, but with me. It was just like, this just doesn't feel quite like me. It's like a puzzle piece that you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I think this goes here. It's the right shape. And you try and cram it in and cram it in and cram it in, and it just won't go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think I'd been feeling that, but I didn't know what to do with that because I'd been on this same life trajectory for as long as I could remember. So if I acknowledged this wasn't right, I didn't know what I would do. I
Okay.
was, I
So it goes
was,
back to this choose your
yeah,
own adventure.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's where, so you had been on a life trajectory of success, right? Where societally, people would say, almost every person that you would talk to, I'm sure, would say that is success. You've hit the pinnacle of success. I'm sure you did well in school, which allowed you to get this job in Facebook. And in order to do the great things that you did, like create the like button, which is fantastic. I mean, like I think that's incredible that I'm talking to the person who created the like button. Just like a dear friend of mine at Microsoft was the person who created autocorrect, and I just think
Oh,
I'm just so amazed that I know you. There are these small things that make such a huge difference, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So you have you started with a poem. Do you have the book in front of you? Do you want? I would love. I should have asked you to have it out. If not,
You know,
I'll.
if you hold it, I can read it. I
Can
don't
you
have it.
read it? Can you see
Yeah,
it?
just the
Okay.
way you have it is good.
Okay.
Okay, this poem is called Tiny Little Yes. There's a tiny little yes inside, hiding where the yeses hide. You'll find it squeezed in, right beside a maybe and a can't decide. It's buried down beneath the woes, somewhere between the nays and nos. You'll have to look past rows and rows of sort ofs, not quites, and so so's. Once your yes is in your grasp, prepare to wonder, gape, and gasp. You may suspect this can't be right, but trust your gut and hold on tight.
I love this. I would say that this kind of represents up until my dad also passed, and I had almost an identical kind, not identical, how can it be identical, but my dad had passed of a heart attack, so I didn't have a lot of time to assimilate. And so he passed, and I had all these kind of unresolved emotions and kind of a moment of reckoning where I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I could have seen him. I was planning on seeing him 2 weeks after he passed away, and my husband was going to ask for my hand in marriage. So it's a really tragic
Oh,
story. He was 2 chapters from finishing his book that he wanted to write his whole life. He was two
oh,
chapters away from writing the final chapter of his life, which, if I don't even, there were like 1,000 spiritual messages that the universe is trying to tell me in all those life circumstances. And I just felt a sense of emptiness on the inside after it happened. And, uh, and I felt the yes, but I just kept on, like, all I could actually, to be honest, I just felt the no, which I think it sounds like you're like, there's something not right. I
yeah.
loved Microsoft. I loved the people. I loved the work. I loved all aspects of it. And I was so grateful because I got a lot of my financial stability that I have now, and which enables me to do what I'm doing now from that. So just so much deep gratitude. But it just didn't feel like, I'm not supposed to be doing this. And
Yeah.
if I don't leave here, I'll never figure out what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. So for you, what was it for you when you thought, it doesn't seem right, it just seems off and it's about me versus something
Yeah.
else. What was your inner dialogue?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting. I noticed something new just hearing you share.
Mhm.
So I appreciate that. So I kind of had two phases. So one was the cancer came back, and
Mhm.
my first reaction was, I don't have time for this.
Mhm.
And so there was sort of in that reaction, and my dad and I were so, so close. I was, a daddy's girl all the way. He coached all my teams. We watched
Yeah.
all the
Oh.
same movies, quoted all the same lines. Like
Yeah.
we were, peas in a pod my whole life. So
Mhm.
when I didn't have time for him or felt like that way, that was the moment I realized somewhere my priorities had gotten confused. I'd gotten lost.
Mhm.
And also, it was the time I finally felt like I had an excuse to stop.
Mm.
Like when I had all that validated, when I couldn't justify my pain or my unease because everything was so great. You can't feel unhappy. Like you're just not trying hard enough, that kind of
Mhm.
thing. I
Mhm.
couldn't stop.
Mhm.
So it was that day I went in and I told my boss, and it was true. And also there was more, which was I need to leave. My dad's sick. I need to leave.
Mm.
Um, because I finally gave myself permission
Mm.
through that to take a break.
Yeah, for me it was slightly different. I literally, from my dad's passing to the time that I left Microsoft, it took 2 years because
Hmm.
I had stuffed everything down so badly. And I would say, to be fair, when you have two kids under the age of 5, you're barely functioning.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so during those, and so that time it was like two kids under the age of 2, and I was just, like on life support, just trying to work part time, do all these things. And at a certain point, for me, we were driving to my husband and I were driving to some event, and I said, "Well, just so it's September, and it's all downhill from now. It's going to be, a bunch of teacher parent conferences, a bunch of events at school. Then Thanksgiving comes, and then Christmas comes, and we're going to be so busy, and we're going to be so busy, and I stopped and I said, you know what? I realize that I've repeated the same refrain now for like a while, and it's always going to be this way."
Mm.
And
Yeah.
like it was finally like, no, this is life.
Yeah.
And I finally realized there's a trade-off, right? Where the cost of you living your life in that way and kind of having this sense of time scarcity, the cost of living your life that way is so great. And the benefits, you're not almost even appreciating the benefits because you're so obseverating. For me, I'm actually talking to me, I'm obseverating about the cost, right? So I'm not even appreciating the benefits of having this incredible husband, these fabulous children. And so I thought, well, these priorities are really screwed up. And I don't even like going to work anymore. So what am I even doing? Like, what am
Yeah.
I doing with my life? So that was my like, it's like you said, it's almost like you needed some good excuse to say, I'm done, you
Yeah.
know?
At
Okay.
that time. And one of the reasons I wrote that poem is because since then it's kind of a constant question, like, does it have to be pain that guides us? Does it have to be, do we have to get to that point where we need an excuse or it's
Mm-hmm.
severe enough, or can we
Mm-hmm.
just choose yes whenever?
Yeah. So what have you found?
um Well, it's so interesting. I think, and I just want to say, because people may be, watching who are in a similar spot. And I actually, when I went in and talked to my boss that day, I asked for a sabbatical, and it actually took me a year and a half before I was gone.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say that because I think sometimes it can look like this dramatic leap. And
Yeah.
my experience maybe was similar to yours. It's sort of like first there's the waking up, then there's the kind of paying attention. How does this feel? And, it really was a process for me too. So I just wanted to say that because it can look, once you go back and you tell the story, it's in two sentences. And then I left my job. It's just
Right.
not
Yeah.
like
No,
that.
but it is. It's like a process of years, maybe, and in both of our cases, years before you kind of almost have the courage to say, "No, I just can't do this anymore."
Yeah.
There's something greater that's being sacrificed.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's a wisdom in it. I have a friend who's going through something like that now, and just watching her, it's like, if you leave the moment that you have the thought, I mean, some people may have great success with that, but you could recreate the same situation. Like,
Mm.
I feel like really taking that time to, like, do I leave? Do I stay? What's working? What's not working? Is this working? Is this good? Is that? And going back and forth. By the time I left, and I initially left, to follow one dream, which is totally not what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Um, it's an experimentation. But by the time I left, it didn't feel like a leap. It felt like, okay, I've really thought about this. I've explored this, and I'm going to step from here to where I'm going. There was still tons of fear, and it still felt like it took courage. But it wasn't like, it was
Mm.
jumping into cold water that's 15 feet down instead of like off a cliff with no idea what was going to happen.
Right. I know that there's a cartoon that I'm trying to find that says exactly this, but I can't find it quickly enough. Okay. So, so you had said that there's a question that you're contemplating, which is,
Oh,
does someone have to go through hardship in order to say yes? And what have you found?
yeah, it's great. So, well, one thing I found is just by asking that question, I am inviting myself into a different way of life. Yesterday, so now I draw comics. Obviously, I do art with some of my time. I do other things. And last night I was feeling like down on myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, well, I should draw something because at least then I'll feel like I'm accomplishing something. And, and then the thought was like, well, do you want to draw from pain because you should or you have to? Or do you want to draw from joy? Do you want to
Mm-hmm.
be one of those artists that needs pain to be an artist? Or do you want to be an artist that draws when she actually feels the like heart calling?
Mm.
And I was like, I would like to be an artist that draws from joy. So I'm not going to do it when I'm feeling pain to try
Mm.
and make myself feel better. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep recreating that I need pain in order to draw art to
Oh,
make.
that's interesting. Wow, that's interesting because then in your mind is connected pain equals art.
Yep. Or it's like an addiction. It's like, well, I'm feeling bad about myself. Well, if I do something that I have decided is worthy, then I can feel better about myself. Then I'm creating this kind of like your conditional love thing. Oh, I have to be creating art to be worthy in my
Mm-hmm.
own system. And
Right,
I would rather be worthy, period.
right.
And if I create art, I create art.
Right, whether you're accomplishing something or not, whether you're
Exactly.
doing art, whether the art is good or not. This is very similar to the letter that I wrote for this person who wanted to give me money. I'm like, I just love myself, and any conditions upon beyond that, I just don't want to accept anymore. I don't want love that is based upon guilt or shame or money. Like, I just don't want that kind of love. And it's
Mhm.
very similar, right? It's like that kind of like, will you love yourself if you don't do the cartoon? Will,
Yep.
you
That's
know?
a great way to put it. Will I love myself if I don't do it? And then I can do it or not. But if
Right.
I'm doing it from that place of like
Right.
conditional,
Yeah.
and to me, it actually shows up in my work. I mean,
Hmm.
anytime I draw from that place, I can tell it just doesn't have the same feeling. I mean, sometimes people say, how come you make stick figures that have so much emotion? They're just stick figures. And that's my best guess is because I draw when I'm feeling love.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? One time I was writing an article and I thought, what would happen if when I'm writing this article, every single thing is focused on love? And because I had been writing some like I can't Cora or I can't remember
Uh-huh.
and I thought I'm going to actually write one that's just like me, like writing factual information, right?
Hmm.
And then I'm going to write something. It was truly like every single word I'm sending love through the energy of what I'm writing. And the words I don't know to be any different, but there's energy and intention with every single word that I was writing. And I got not that it matters what I got, but I could tell from the response that there is a way of writing or talking or even drawing, I think that is a conveyance of love because if that's what is in your heart when you're doing it, I think it comes through. Don't you? I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean, I really felt that, when a friend of mine has a 2-year-old and said
Hmm.
that this book is his favorite book and he doesn't even read.
Oh,
He'll just flip through all the pages and then he'll flip back. And I'm like, it's in some ways, this book was me healing my inner 2-year-old. So I get it. It makes
yeah. I
sense.
love that. That's a fantastic idea because some of the ideas in here are very much like, I think they're truths. Do you know what I mean? They're inner truths that a 2-year-old can feel because it's true for
Hmm.
everyone, right?
Hmm.
Which I think is really great. Which I think you said in the prologue is that um, it speaks to us on a very human level. We all have these human experiences and these talk to that. All right, I want to talk to you about these are two ones that have been huge for me.
Great.
So I'd love to hear your experience. So this is
Yeah.
one which I don't know if people can see it, but tell us a little bit about what this is.
Yeah. So the name of this comic is Building Trust. So if you can see from the top to the bottom, these 4 little figures are building the word trust. And having these experiences like this is fun and this is hard. Um, this will need reinforcement and reassurance. Um, and then in the end, they say worth it totally.
Yes. So it's a
Yeah.
leap of faith, right? To do as you say in this, right? This pretty much summarizes it. When I left at Microsoft, it was like this.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's how you felt at Facebook. I mean, this is a long time. I left Microsoft, like, 18 years ago. But
Mm.
um, you leap into the unknown where when and I think that this is when you get the trust thing has to be
Yeah.
really operative. This is when this has to be in it's so hard to do.
Yep.
So tell me about your experience with trust.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, trust, my goodness, it can mean so many different things. I'll say that comic in particular was in the context of a new relationship.
Mm,
And I remember drawing it after our first conflict, and it
mm,
was like he said this and I said this, and I thought he was saying, we were kind of, how we hear things personally, and I thought he said that and he thought I meant this. And
mm-hmm,
it was kind of like then when we finally got together and really listened and healed from that misunderstanding, it was just like, that comic was about that. It's hard and you
mm-hmm,
need to keep doing it, and we'll keep misunderstanding and we'll keep pushing each other's buttons. But then at the end, when you heal it and you're sitting, on the mountaintop looking at the sunset, having gotten through that together,
mm-hmm,
it's totally worth it. And it amplifies the relationship, to go through that stuff together.
mm-hmm.
Um, so that's what that comic's about. Um, when I think of trust these days, that was maybe few years ago that I drew that. Um, I'm really into the present moment right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really good. I just find like when I pay attention to now, it takes care of everything. I mean, when I worry about my purpose, it's like, well, now it's talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
When I worry about love, it's now I'm loving you
Mm-hmm.
and me and
Right.
whoever might be listening. It's so
Right.
simple. The directions are so clear. And trust to me feels like the most sturdy place I can possibly land is in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
If I try and figure out what's my purpose for the next 5 years, I get really stressed out and confused.
Mm-hmm.
If I try and figure out, do I write this article that someone asked me to write and I don't know yet, and I try to figure it out instead of just being with, oh, that's exciting and I don't know, which
Right.
is all that's true right now.
Right.
Um, I feel like every time I trust the present moment to be enough, I watch this entire life unfold. Like I never planned to be an artist. Dharma Comics has no planning, no intention. I never planned to write a book. I mean, there was none of that. It just
Right.
happened from one moment by moment. Well, now I feel like drawing. Well, now I feel like drawing. Well, now I'll put it online. Well, now I'll build a website because my friend's not on Facebook, so he can't see them. So I'll build a website so he can see them. Well, now I'll do, and then, well, now an agent's calling and she wants to know, well, sure, I'll say yes. And just one step after another. And suddenly I have this whole other career with there was no intention other than I want to be happy.
It comes out of this, right? I mean, my life
Yeah,
has very
exactly.
similar trajectory where um, I actually have been I had a series of radio shows in which I plan the radio shows like usually like 6 months in advance. Like, so I don't even know really what's going to show up. I've kind of briefly read like, the press release. I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. Okay, yes. And then I just wait until the people get back to me with which dates they can meet and I just schedule everything. I don't
Hmm.
really, you'd think I'd have some type of programming. I don't. I have no programming whatsoever. Aside from something that looks interesting, I say yes and then I go from there. And, so I had a series of programs, all of which were telling me, you know what, it's about having the small voice on the inside, your higher self lead. And I thought, well, what does that look like? I don't know. And I thought back and I said, no, I do know what that looks like. Anytime I've actually done this, and said yes to whatever was I wanted, like if the universe was coming to me for opportunities, and if I tuned in, I did what it says in this cartoon, right? Um, you know, right, where it's like, what should I do? And you're asking, another person. Really, it's about going on the inside. When I did this for myself, and I went on the inside and thought, okay, it doesn't even seem logical, but the world is bringing me this thing, and I don't really know why, and I'm just going to say yes if it feels right. Like if it doesn't feel right, I'll say no, but I'll say yes. And anytime I've done that in my life, um, miracles kind of happened. And also, I to go back to what you're saying, I don't want people listening to go like, "Oh yeah, that's fine." Like miracles will happen, right? It just sounds like
Yeah.
ridiculous, right? And it started off small, like I started saying yes to small stuff. Like I decided to walk around. I heard in my head, walk around the lake. I'm like, okay. Well, I want to run around the lake, so I'll run around the lake. So I didn't know why, but I was pulled to run around Green Lake, which is a neighboring walk around here at a certain time. So I just went. Like I had no idea why, but I was just running. So I was determined to get a workout. So I was running, and then as I was running, I saw this guy who was a yoga teacher of mine. And I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I was like, "Should I stop?" You know, when you're running, you're not sure if you should stop because you're running and it's gonna blow your whole workout. And so I said, "Hey, how's it going?" And he's like, "Well, it's okay. I just got fired from my job." And I was like, and this is such an asshole. This is what an asshole I am. I'm like, should I stop running? I thought, oh no. Okay, this is why you're supposed to be running in the first place and why you said to walk. So I stopped and I started walking with him and I was talking to him and I was describing. But so it started really small where I heard that inner voice and I followed it. And sometimes it was simply I just went someplace and I and I just got some huge, like some little, like not a huge, like some little delightful thing. Like I went and I was somehow curious to walk into the store and they had all these essences of like different perfumes you could make. And I made a little perfume and in that little 15 minutes was like the most joyous moment like that whole month. So it started small for me, but then
Yeah.
when I look at, your wisdom in this book, right, saying yes and then trusting, even when it's hard, right, like you're talking about your boyfriend,
Mhm.
even when it's hard, I've had those conversations with my husband, and I'm like, I hate you, I love you, I hate you, and I know that I love you, which is why I'm
Yeah.
going to stay here until we figure out what the truth is for both of
Yeah.
us. But this is so true, so true.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think, that really is my practice too, the tiny, like, that's why it's a tiny little yes. That's
Yeah,
why I like to speak about it because in my experience and, you know, there aren't that many big yeses. There aren't that many big decisions, actually. It's like,
it's true.
remember I was, so a whole part of my life was I had an eating disorder for a really long time.
Hmm.
And, I was bulimic and I kept thinking I'll get help or I'll just meditate more or, I just kept thinking like I can solve this, I can do this, I'll just diet tomorrow, I'll quit tomorrow. I just all these, this went on for like 15 years and
Wow.
um finally a friend was like, I had told him what was going on and he just said in really clear terms like stop what you're doing, find the best place in the world, go get help and do it now. And he just said it in a way that was so loving but so severe that
Yeah,
I heard him.
yeah.
And but I remember I was in an art therapy program at the time, and I was gonna basically have to drop out in order to go to rehab. And I remember thinking, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Put so much into this school. Like they had a sudden opening, and it was the one place I wanted to go, the
Oh,
rehab center.
wow.
And it was like I put so much in, I don't know what to do. So I made this decision that I was only going to make all of the small decisions to go to rehab. But at the moment it was time to like get on the plane or sign the check or whatever kind of the last thing was, then I would decide. But I never had to decide, am I going to rehab or not? I just had to do the
Baby
steps.
steps forward.
Yeah. And I was blown away because then by the time, literally the night before I had the plane, I'd paid my deposit. I still didn't know if I wanted to go. I couldn't
Wow.
sleep. I was tossing and turning. This was going to be, I had signed up for a month, but I knew in my heart it was going to be a lot longer. So it was like, if I go, my whole life is changing. And I wasn't
Mm.
sure yet. I mean, I had been living my whole life this way since I was a teenager. Um, and then I woke up and the cab was coming. Actually, no, a friend drove me to the airport. So she's like, are you ready? And I'm like, still don't know if I'm going. Still don't.
Wow.
And it was literally until I walked into the clinic, I was like, I guess I'm going to rehab.
I'm here.
I'm
Wow.
here. And that was so powerful. I make so many decisions that way now because when I don't know and it's a big choice and I try to know ahead of time, it just feels, I don't know, it just feels forceful, I guess, to try and like demand that I know something before I know it.
Hmm. So I'm curious, what would happen to me, the way that I'm hardwired, is I would say, oh, well, you just have to decide or not decide, and,
Mhm.
just go or don't go. And then I'd be like, oh, what about the money? I already spend money for the plane and the money for the ticket and all the money for. How did any of that even come through your mind, or was it just like, I just want ultimate freedom of choice to know at the moment that I'm there whether at that present moment I want to walk in or not. How did you deal with any of those kind of
Yeah,
egoic
I
things?
mean, maybe this is, yeah, to our earlier conversation about leaving our job. I'd had this eating disorder for 15 years. So I
Yeah.
had been through all of it. I'd actually, the reason I knew what rehab center I wanted to go to was because I had decided on it 2 years earlier and then
Wow, okay.
decided it was too expensive,
Mhm.
that I could figure this out. I would, so yes, I had already decided that and then basically tried everything I could think of.
To
I
say
would like
no to not.
everything. Yeah. I had my best friend, I would text her like every hour what I was eating or, to try and like not
Right.
get stuck. I was doing everything I could think of. So maybe that's part of how I actually went. I just went all the way into the no and just saw that there was no freedom there. Um,
Ah, wow, interesting.
yeah. And it was still that hard to go, which is shocking.
Right, so you almost had to, and I really relate to this. You just need to prove that your current path is just, there's no options. Like, it's not a winning, like for me, the whole idea of having my ego run my life, I just realized like I could do that. And actually, my ego's done a pretty fine job. Like, I have to congratulate my ego. You've done a great job. You feel like, material success, whatever, like I'm very happy and I'm not begrudging my ego, but having something else deep inside lead it really is uh, so rewarding. Sometimes it hurts like hell. Like the thing that they don't tell you, all these interviews I did preceding, what they
Yeah.
don't tell you is that it's so hard. That this will need reinforcement and reassurance, and you need trust. It is so hard, but in the end, it is totally worth it
Yep.
to follow that inner yes. And what I love about the way that you went about it is that, and I think because our conscious minds are so strong, we have to prove to ourselves that, okay, we're going to try it the way that we think is the most easiest for
Yeah.
us, right?
Yeah.
Like I'll get my friend to, I'm going to email her what I'm eating, all those different types of things. And then you recognize like, okay, this is just not working. But I love how you broke it down to, okay, I'm just going to say the small yes to, yeah, signing up for the program. Or, I just love the small yeses because at every single moment, you're at choice,
Yep.
which feels so empowering, right? Including saying no at any point in time. So, so what is this? Is it all related to that
I
time?
love that one. Having a choice isn't freedom. Making one is.
Yeah, that to me relates to. I don't know. To me, I don't know, when did you write this and what was happening for you at the
Gosh.
time?
That one's like maybe 5 years old, and I actually don't remember what was going on at the time. But it could have been right around that because um, that was a big theme for me at that time. Um, I think so often, I still have this, and maybe you do too. So one of the hardest parts about leaving a known path is it's like it's all set up, or maybe you think it is. Like if I just do this, I know what I'm going to do. But then when you leave, there's not a lot of clarity. I mean, it's like the whole world. Do I go for a walk or do I go for a run? Do I draw something or do I call a friend? Do I make lunch? Or my experience was like chaos of choice.
Hmm.
And that has been a real challenge to navigate.
Hmm.
Um, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I don't remember what I was thinking at that time. But now when I look back, it has to do with like at least picking a path.
Hmm.
There's a Zen proverb. move and the way we'll open.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love that because when I left Facebook, I was already drawing comics, but it was just a hobby. I was never going to make a thing out of it. I went and started this other company. And that wasn't right at all. But like, at least I tried, like I did something and I
Right.
shifted and then I did another thing and I shifted. And, um, yeah,
And what that brings to mind to me for is that sometimes and this relates to the other thing that you said a couple of minutes ago, that sometimes you say yes and you're not even sure where that yes is going to take you.
yeah,
Right? Like you did not know that saying yes to the drawing and yes to making a website for your friend and all those kinds of things would lead to you now having a business around the comics, right?
yeah,
Like you had no expectation or even knowing where the yes would take you. And
yeah,
that's what's so confounding and hard. So you said yes to these things and I think that sometimes you don't even know where that took you until maybe year like it could be 10 years later or 10 minutes later, like sometimes
right.
you just don't even know why.
Or you may never know. That's something I think about all the
Yes.
time. It's like sometimes my yes will say, take the long way to walk to the post office. And I like to think, I'm like, maybe I would have gotten hit by a bus if I'd
Right.
gone the other way, but I'll never know that. So I'm just
Exactly.
taking the long way, and there's no apparent ever payback, or I didn't run into the person who needed. There's nothing that comes from it.
Right.
So that's another element of trust. It's like I'm doing this because I wanted to do it, and there's no other reason, and something may happen or nothing may happen. And
Right.
my experience of following my yes is like 98% of the time, there's nothing other than whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, because it's like something is happening and you can't see it, right?
Yeah,
Like maybe you walking that way, someone else across the street walked another way, and it affected someone down the street that was walking another way.
right.
Like we just don't
Or
know.
when I what's coming to mind right now, there was this video a couple years ago, and basically what had happened is there was in a subway,
Hmm.
mom had like was talking and let go of the her stroller,
Hmm.
and it rolled and the baby fell onto the tracks.
Oh my gosh.
And a train was coming. I think I think it might have been in Australia. I forget where it was. A man, like without thinking, jumped off the track, left his son standing there, grabbed the baby, and rolled into the tracks. And the train went over both of them.
Oh my god.
I know it's an intense story, but I often think of that because I like what I think of is that man, in order to make that decision, like I imagine had to have practiced in his life surrendering to love.
Right.
Like there's no way at that moment when that train's coming that you do that unless
You just know somewhere
it
deep inside. Or maybe
yeah.
it's just programmed. Did he say that? Did they interview the guy and did he say why he did it?
I think what I remember is he didn't think.
Hmm.
And so I just think of that often for my reference point because I don't know why I'm trusting myself. I could trust myself 10,000 times. And the reason that I need to know how to do that may come up in 10 years when I need to jump in front of that train,
Right.
but I may never know. So it's less about, needing any kind of immediate feedback and more about like, I just want to be the kind of person who trusts myself because if I'm ever called upon, I want to act in alignment.
Yeah. Wow. That's a powerful story. That's a really powerful story. Okay. I don't even know how to comment to that aside from saying it's okay. And I think that this actually may actually summarize it in some way. So tell us
Yeah,
about this cartoon.
yeah. So I'm reframing my life from a set of goals to a whole bunch of adventures. Um, the first thing I'll say about that comic is actually what it reminds me of is I was having a conversation with some friends um, after Burning Man,
Mm-hmm.
and it was my first time there. And basically, one friend and I, we were all working in tech at the time. We were saying that the way that we organized our life was we wanted to have the best experiences. Like we wanted to make the most out of life. We wanted to
Mm-hmm.
maximize all these like quantitative words.
Right.
And that's how we decided, we were strategic and we always wanted to, maximize. And we were talking to a friend who was an artist and a designer. And he just looked at us like we were crazy. And he was like, that's not how I organize my life at all. And we were like, how do you do it?
Yeah.
And he was like, his answer, he was like, aesthetics. And
Interesting.
I remember being totally perplexed at that moment. Like, what does he mean, aesthetics? And I remembered it. That was like 6 years ago, all the time. And I would ask myself, what does he mean? Because in my world, I want the best life. I want to live my fullest potential.
Mm-hmm.
It was all this maximizing language.
Yeah.
And so I would just keep checking. Like I didn't, it was like a fish in water. I'm like, what is he even talking about?
Yeah, it's that thing about like if a tree falls in the forest, there's no sound. You know, that one where you're like, I still
Yeah,
don't know what it means.
I feel right. But the more I paid attention, it would be like, aesthetics would just be like, I just want to experience something now because it inspires me or it feels beautiful or it's just a nice way to do it, not because I'm trying to get anywhere else. It's like reminds me of a friend who started learning Farsi with absolutely no intention of doing anything with it. She just liked the idea. And in my mindset, I'm like, no, you learn Spanish because the most people in America speak Spanish, so it's
Right.
practical,
Right.
even though I love French.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
just like that comic for me is about switching from a mindset where I know exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing it because it's all going to add up to this specific thing. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe I learned French because I love the way it feels when I speak it,
The aesthetic part of it.
the aesthetic part of it. Or I remember one day, so I used to live in San Francisco and I would commute to Facebook. And you take the 101 usually because that's the fastest, but sometimes the 101 was all clogged up. So you'd have
Mm-hmm.
to take the 280, which was beautiful but
Mm-hmm.
slower.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember I would check traffic every day and I'd be like delighted on days when there was traffic because it meant I could take the 280. It literally took me a year to realize I could take the 280 because I wanted to. And it blew my mind.
Okay, I love that story because I can so relate to that story, right? Because there's this kind of because we are in a society where time we're in a scarcity model where there's not enough time. Like we've completely believed that this whole idea of time even existing, right? So like, oh my gosh, I can't do that because I'm going to be 15 minutes late for work. I could be doing something else with my life,
Yeah.
achieving while I'm at Facebook or at Microsoft or whatever. I can't
Yeah.
do that. But it's like, I just love that story. And to me, how I relate to that story is it's taken so long, and I'm still not free of that mentality of that it's about achievement. If I don't achieve, then I have if I don't achieve, if I don't have a set of goals that are moving in a certain direction,
Mhm.
um, that amount to something, then I mean I literally realized this, and I've been working on achievement for a long time. That if I don't have these set of goals and I'm not working towards achievement, then what happens if I go down the well of misery that really resides in the deep part of my being? It's I don't have any meaning. Well, I
Mhm.
have no meaning. I'm worthless. Why should I even appear on this earth? If
Mhm.
if this if I don't have this, then I don't really even understand why I'm existing on this earth.
Yeah.
And I think frankly if we all look deep into the well of our soul, that's the message that we get from society, right? And I think that we don't get this, and it wasn't until I went to a shamanic journey and they have you die before you die. So you actually practice the art of death. So you pretend, you say, because a lot of people fear death. So they said, really, when you're working with clients or yourself, you want to go to the place as if you're dying to just see what the heck's going to happen when
Mm.
you go. And when I went, the wisdom that I got was this: it's about adventures. It really is about why we're here on Earth. For me, why I shouldn't even say why I'm here on Earth is to just experience life. It's really as simple as that. I don't have to accomplish anything. I don't have to have a certain number of likes on my posts. I don't have to have a certain number of views or hits or whatever the current measurement of my
Right.
success is. I don't have to
Right.
have any of that,
Yeah.
and I can still love myself, still be loved, and as long as I'm having freedom and fun, then like that's it. Like that's good enough.
Yeah.
It's taken a long time to get there, but that's kind of, I don't know, that's where I am right now.
Yeah.
And it's this, right? It's moving
Yeah.
against the crowd.
Yeah. And sometimes that can be external. Like it can, I notice sometimes I can think everybody's going this way and I'm going this way.
Hmm.
Sometimes it'll just be the voices in my head are all pushing me that way. And then one voice is like, just sit still today. And all the
Right.
voices are like, but what about this? And what about that? We did it. It's like, just sit still. It's like, okay, I'll just sit on my hands and practice.
But isn't that great when you do that? Because I wouldn't have gotten to my aha this morning until I'm like, you know what? I'm still thinking about this one situation that pisses me off. And I thought, why are you still pissed off at this thing? It's really not this thing. It's
Mm,
something else that's deeper than this thing. And
yep.
this little thing is feeling hardship right now. To answer my version of that question, sometimes it has to feel so bad and it has to feel, for me, for hardship to occur until I look at the nasty tar like crap that's inside of me. I mean,
Mm,
for me, when it goes, it has to get that bad for me to kind of, because I'm okay with my emotions, but as someone who's raised to not even have any emotions, it's really hard for me to go there.
yeah.
So it has to get pretty bad for me to go down into the deep, La Brea tar pit and dig stuff out. But today I did get the just sit still, and I just sat there, just take and I did this meditation where I was pushing all my energy, like the anger and the frustration and the irritation of this other person. I'm like, I know it's not this person, so what is it? And it had to do with someone else. Really, it really wasn't about this person or that situation, but it had to get that bad and hard
Mhm.
before I let go. And I have no idea what we were talking about. I think it's related. It's related to what we were just talking about. I don't even know. Um, okay, but let's still go back to this one, this cartoon. When did you draw this and what did it mean for you, if you can remember? I know it's kind of
Yeah.
hard because you've been drawing for the last 7 years.
This one was recent and actually I it was just a I had talked to an astrologer.
Oh, okay. Wait, and just for folks that are listening on the radio, it can be
Yeah.
hard work moving against a crowd, and there's this one person who is facing the opposite direction from a group of people who are all in black facing one, and there's this person all in white facing a different direction. Okay,
Yeah.
so sorry, tell us about
Yeah.
this recent cartoon.
So yeah, it was just I had done a reading with an astrologer
Yeah.
and that was to me the essence of what he'd shared with me. He said, for lifetimes you've been really good at amassing conventional success. That's
Mm-hmm.
something you've got you can do that with one hand tied behind your back.
Mm-hmm.
And this lifetime it's about finding a new kind of wealth. And it's
Mm.
going to be a real challenge for you because not only has this path been comfortable for you in this lifetime, you've been doing this for many. So I
Yeah.
don't even know, how literally I don't necessarily take things very literally about past lives or, again, it's just, but the part that resonated was past lives or no, I had accomplished something in this life. I felt fulfilled on that. And it was time to accomplish something new. And especially now I live in Silicon Valley and there's just a lot of like ambition and I'm going to start my own thing and I'm going to change the world. And it's kind of, I think we can all here get kind of caught up in like, what is the cool thing that you're doing? And so for me, it was like to practice staying inside and sitting on my couch and drinking tea and looking out the window as a practice was
Wow.
it's still challenging because I'm like, I should be doing da, da, da. And I'm like, wow, there goes that thought and there goes that thought. And so that's the hard work is to kind of stay, just, back to what we were talking about at the very beginning. Like, can I love me now? Can I love me now? Can I love me now? And not react to any of that.
Mm-hmm. I heard the best description from an interview I did yesterday with Lama Surya Das, and he said, um, meditation is just, it's the practice of just staying, like you were saying, staying and staying in that moment. And the way he described it, all of a sudden there's something that clicked in my head that hadn't clicked before. Do you know in martial arts, I don't know if you've ever done it, but you practice someone attacking you and like how you would react. And then at the time when that person does attack you, if and this is maybe not exactly the right metaphor for meditation, but anyhow, when the thing does attack you, you actually have this built-in muscle memory that you can actually just react very quickly. And I think that what I would say that how it relates to meditation is when I look at Lama Surya Das and I've talked to him and I'm like, what happens when you're in traffic and you're just PO'd at someone? He has that initial, I want to give him the finger, and then like he just whoosh, he spirals up because he's had so much practice of
Mhm.
going there that he can spiral up. And he said, when you get the practice of sitting on the couch when your Facebook friends are walking out the window with their like, with their phones and their virtual reality goggles or whatever they're doing in the Bay Area, it's like just saying, just sitting here is enough. And when I'm sitting here and if I do this often enough, I will get this into my muscle memory. And I too, like Lama Surya Das, can go up and go to a different place when life attacks me, right?
Yep.
When I perceive life attacking me.
Yep.
I just thought that was so kind of powerful. And then he said also, you get to a point if you do it over and over and over again, you get more absorbative, like you have these more intense experiences of presence because your consciousness is increasing and you have a higher, like your bliss is more blissful, your
Mhm.
joy is more joyful. And I just thought, yay, okay, this is going someplace. Not to be too achievement oriented, but for me, that was like, okay, I can sit. It's sometimes really hard to sit, but just knowing that you're increasing your consciousness, even though you may not be conscious at that moment that you're sitting on your
Yep.
couch sipping tea.
Yeah.
Anyways, I love that. All right. So, any other final words? I mean, for someone who is at that point of hearing the little yes, I think we've given a lot of really good tips.
Yeah.
But any other final words for people who are maybe thinking of a career change or having a hard time with their own job?
Yeah. What's coming up for me right now is just to be gentle.
Mm,
Just this stuff, I think sometimes we can gloss over it like it's not a big deal, or, it's just, or it feels like a big deal, but I don't know. I just feel like, from my experience, when I'm at some place that feels hard, it is hard. And if I don't really let myself feel how hard it is, it's hard for me to bring the level of compassion and love and care that I need. So for anyone who's in that spot, I just want to say it's hard and be gentle.
yeah. Instead of saying like, "What's wrong with?" Because here's what I hear clients say: "What's wrong with me? Why can't I move forward?" It's like it's
Yep.
okay. I'm just not ready yet, right?
Yeah. Or this is scary. This
Yeah,
is really scary. Or like, I feel sad when I think of leaving my job. There's all these things I love about it. That's so sad. There's grief here.
right.
I think we think we can and should make decisions faster, go quickly, but we have things take time, and there's a process, and
Mm,
there's a lot more to it than I think we're aware. So I just wanted to invite into life change, into meditation, into relationships, whatever it is, just more gentleness.
yeah. So honor the yes, and then also honor the no,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The no is just as important as the yes, and the
Yeah.
yes will come
I'm
when you're ready.
actually, if anyone wants to play along, I'm practicing a friend invented November, where
Oh,
for the month of November, we're honoring our no.
oh,
Um,
I love it.
so if anyone wants to play, the game is to say as no as often and as authentically as you can.
I love it. All right, so is it just playing? Is it a virtual game or just
For now, it's just a game. Get your friends to play, so you can, basically when you say no, you can be like, "I did it! I
I
said no."
said
You celebrate the courage to say no.
no. I love it. Okay, we've been talking to Leah Pearlman, and we've been talking about her book, Drawn Together. Thank you so much.
Thank
This is
you. Yeah,
fantastic.
thank
Yeah,
you. It's
thank you.
great.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.